is saying is it's not a discussion, it's actually a decision that was made, and it's a financial act that was carried out. So it'd be interesting if they can actually use that argument, because they're really quite two different things.
Yes. I mean, I think so I should have introduced Tori. Tori is one of the main campaigners with me as well. I think the interesting thing about that discussion is that it will have involved looking at the finances of the firm. The firms will have had to have proved that they couldn't go ahead without that £2 million. So that would have involved a lot of their internal finances, whether that proof is justified or not. And of course it would also reveal, if one could have that information, it would reveal the level of profit that they were expecting, the level of return that they were expecting on the development. So I think that's probably the crucial bit of information they want to hide.
I had a question for Helen too, and it relates to something I'm doing with Ruhul on garments. You know, so these builders, I interviewed somebody who had the unfortunate role of being the community and enterprise manager for a Section 106 in Barking Riverside, and I'd really like if there was a people's orientated database, because you know you've really got treasure.
Mapping for Change are doing it. UCL?
Excellent.
Ricky Hackley. Mapping for Change.
Because when these alchemists come together and use their spreadsheets, it'll be interesting to know like what their rounding errors were beforehand. Because I remember once I was at King's when I was doing a PhD, and someone from the World Bank came and she said something like, these developing countries don't have any expertise. Now we know that the World Bank destroys expertise, but I had the case study of like one, right? Pooling case studies to speak clearly. So Mapping for Change is doing.
Mapping for Change, yeah. Mookie Hackley from UCL, now professor.
I mean, that would be very useful, because I think if you want to sort of make any legal challenge, you have to sort of provide some quite technical evidence as well. So I mean, and that is where the whole process is very, very technocratic and anti-democratic.
Absolutely. What I think isn't very clear, I think if we started to develop a template of the sorts of information, because you can read through reams of stuff, and we don't want to have to do that. And I'm not sure if that has happened. Yeah. Is maybe that's something that you could be looking at. Is that like a template about like how many people, what was your, just any that sort of really strong information, and which Treasury Green Book did you happen to use?
That's right. Yeah. And also, which are the key documents to go to?
Exactly.
In all the mass of the documentation, where do we really have to go? Where have we really got to get one of where the problems are? Yeah.
Sorry, this is a question for all of you really, well, everyone in this room. What I'm struggling with, and I'm used for this, is I vote locally for people to represent me, nationally for people to represent me, European people to represent me. I have quite strong views and everything, but none of those at any point seem to address any of these issues that we're all concerned about in here. So why is it, well, how come it's not us that are the weirdos, and why is the rest of the world, why have you got to bang your head against it, and yet no one seems willfully to stand up and say, well actually, is it just purely the power of money, or again,
I'm really very clear. I think it's a bit Emperor's New Clothes. I don't know who I was having a conversation with earlier. It's what is an economy for? And if you were to read the jobs and growth strategy set out by Boris Johnson, you'd think that the London economy is completely predicated on making things to export them. Because that's the only way jobs and growth are going to be developed if you read Boris Johnson's treatise, Jobs and Growth, from the London Enterprise Panel. And also if you talk about what you were saying, Battersea, Nine Elms, and so to your site, we're having huge investment pumped into sites for 40 to 70% of it to be sold abroad. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, this is Little England and it's only for Englanders, and I'm not saying just for us who live here. But when such a high percentage is being sold abroad, you've got to question what our economy is for. And it's not for improving our quality of life, that's for sure. So I think it is about Emperor's New Clothes, and I think it was a bit like the question that you asked. It's about, we believe, we've got this mantra that any job is worth better than none, and that could be absolutely right. But if you take NEF, the New Economics Foundation, 21-hour week with much less salary is probably better and the way that we need to go. But that's because we're addicted to consumption. We're addicted to more bits of rubbish in our lives, It's not about coming here and having a chat with our friends. It's about more things, and you've got to think about, so when I say Emperor's New Clothes, I'm talking about absolutely root and branch, question, smell the roses. It's a bit like a midlife crisis for the whole of Western society. And I would say that our politicians aren't really very geared towards having that level of introspection. Now, you could say that I'm a mad woman, and I think that's what you said. We are all mad here as a consequence of that. But it's a bit like, if I were to go to the trade unions and say, actually, we don't need another runway at Heathrow, they would say, actually, we do need it for the growth and the jobs. So, and yet we've still got children who live in the foothills of Heathrow who are seriously suffering at school. So I'm just saying, we have to seriously question what an economy is for. And it's really challenging. You've got to have respect for them, politicians. I mean, I am one, I'm really very clear that it's very hard to stand up in the wilderness and make a very different statement.
I think that's very true. I endorse almost everything you said, but I would add, in response to the idea of what are these local politicians and national politicians doing, at the local level, Victoria and I were reminiscing about it, and I went and checked up the actual minutes of the meeting. They are paranoid about being sued. They are absolutely paranoid when it comes to the planning process. They are absolutely paranoid about it, to the extent that they have to declare, as if it were something to be corruption, they have to declare if they met their residents about this local development. If some residents came to see them to say, what do you think about this development? They have to declare that, because not to do so would mean their vote was invalidated. So what you have here, I absolutely agree with you though, but what you have here is brute financial power.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to, because they can sue the socks off you.
But I think we have, almost in solution to both of those issues, we have transparency, and we have social media, and we have, if we can lower the barrier to that discussion, like you were saying about, in order to get into that discussion, you've got to read loads of reports, maybe become an economist. There's a massive barrier to entry. If that discussion starts with something appearing from your friend in Facebook about something's happening, what do you think about it, and trying to engage you in that way, then it's a different way of, it's making the whole thing transparent, and then once you've done that, once you've made that transition, then backroom discussions and all of those sort of things take on a completely different, that's the way to...
And the Forest of Hands went up.
Yes.
Do we take two questions and then we can...
Yes.
Right,
Thank you.
They might be contributions, but some
Yes.
people would like to.
Yeah, statements, contributions, it's all good.
I would love to find out, as a developer, how do we solve the problem in London, an accommodation problem? Let me just take one issue.
Could you shout a little, yeah.
Okay, 106, yeah?
Yes.
If you build 20 units, you can give the council 7. If you build 25, for instance, you have to give them 40%. Where do you get the money to then develop accommodation? It just baffles me. If you give council 40% of your development.
For affordable housing, you mean?
Exactly.
Okay.
Where do you get the money to then build another one?
Well, it doesn't work like that. But
Shall we take the other question
yeah.
and deal with it?
Well, it's not a question, it's more of a bit of information and contribution.
Perhaps, one answer to yours is perhaps you get the council to build the affordable homes that you need. Perhaps that's one solution to our shortage of housing. Perhaps another solution to our affordable housing is not to put a bedroom tax on the poor, but a bedroom tax on the rich. They're the ones with the excessive bedrooms.
I think the issue is that the grant
that doesn't
for new
solve
homes.
this problem. You see, it's so easy for us to, have.
The developers don't give 40% over. That doesn't happen. That there are grants. Now the grants are tapering down, admittedly, but the affordable housing doesn't come from the developer gratis as a gift to the community.
No,
It doesn't work like that. There are housing support, what's it called?
They'll give a housing subsidy, they'll give a social fund.
They're a social fund, and they do go to partner up with a housing developer from social housing who are experienced in that. So don't think that they're just, that
I'm
they're...
not thinking I've experienced it.
Yeah, but it's
I'm
not a
saying-
tax, is
no,
it?
no.
So-
What I'm saying, I'm
Yeah.
just asking a simple question. How do we tackle the problem that we face? Everybody here, we are talking about what the council does or what the council will do. Those people that bring in money into London to help develop the economy, how do we encourage them to come in, bring that money, build and make money in a particular time so that they can reinvest it?
I think there's a couple of things in that. There's the Section 106 is pretty much negotiable anyway. But that's what we've been talking about, is that if that negotiation can become more transparent, then that would be useful. But the other thing is the community infrastructure levy.
Which is
actually,
the
yeah.
106 has been replaced by.
Yeah, and that doesn't do a 40% a point. That does a per metre square you will pay X, and that's all written down. The idea is that it de-risks the developers.
I think the other thing is, when we set the housing targets, the affordable housing targets in London, we were really very clear that it depends where it is. Now, take Nine Elms as a classic example. You don't have to encourage them in. It's been land banked, it's sat there derelict for goodness knows how long, because actually it's been in the developer's best interest not to develop. So, with the deepest respect to your point, it's got to be scalable, it's got to be appropriate. In certain parts of London, you don't need to attract people. They'll build on a postage stamp. So the issues, that there are slightly different issues. But I do absolutely believe it's a collaboration between registered social landlords that have to be available in that area. And we do need to give decent grants, because at the moment, that's being scaled back by the government. And then the issue is, I would say, about rent, because there's no getting away from it. I can't even afford an affordable rent. So I think that if I were being absolutely honest with you, it's got to be a root and branch look at housing in London. I would say that we are overpriced, we're overheated, that people are paying way too much for their homes in London now. And I think that part of that is the race to the bottom or race to the top for prices. And that doesn't mean that the quick buck might be over, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Thanks for
But we
putting
need a
a point to that.
contribution.
Can we have your contribution?
Yeah, well, I think that what's happened is it's been very interesting, and as you get more into these things, you start to realise that the level at which a lot of these problems are tackled is not always the one where you can really solve the problem.
Absolutely.
So we've got a housing problem in London. I've been involved in some work on the bedroom tax and also work there. And there's a problem in Lewisham at the moment of houses being subdivided into smaller and smaller units. Landlords are packing people in, so they'll take one room and turn it into a little flat, and so you get 7 or 8 units inside a house. A lot of these things are not planned. There's all sorts of problems with fire regulations. People are paying, £800-900 a month for a bedsit in unfashionable Lewisham. I also heard, amazingly enough, a case of a guy who managed to get accommodation for £15 a week, but it did involve him sleeping in a cupboard under the stairs, literally a cupboard under the stairs. Harry Potter. I don't know whether his name's Harry Potter, but somebody got the idea. And as the guy said to me, somebody said to me, well, at least he's got a roof over his head. And I said, well, not only has he got a roof over his head, he's got a set of stairs over his head. So there's a very serious problem. But why on earth would anybody want to come to London with its appalling air quality? Well, the weather's quite good at the moment, but generally it isn't very good. Well, it's because of employment. Unemployment is not great in London, but it's better than other parts of the country. Nationally, we don't really have a housing problem. What we have is an employment problem which forces people to come to London. Now, I know that in Lewisham, of course, it's segments. There's it's the wrong sort of jobs. There aren't enough jobs. 36% of young people between 16 and 24 in Lewisham are unemployed. Why? Because there aren't the appropriate jobs for them. There are jobs if you're a financial director or an accountant or something like that, but the sort of semi-skilled and unskilled jobs have gone over the years. So there are sort of a lot of, in order to tackle these things, we have to tackle them at different levels. Some of them we have to tackle at a national level. And then coming back to this thing about political parties, all the political parties, all the main political parties have all been captured by financial interests. So half the money of the Conservative Party comes from finance. I think a third of it comes from just 15 donor groups, basically family groups. Similar situation with Liberal Democrats. Labour Party, they're cutting their funding from trade unions and they're going more for finance in the city, which is what happened after 1997. So all these, the main political parties have been captured. There's no traction with these people when you approach them, as I've done over the years with these things. And that's why in Lewisham we set up our own political party called Lewisham People Before Profit. Just we basically that explains our programme. We want to do things for Lewisham. We've had to set it up on a Lewisham-wide basis because we couldn't get the main political parties to do anything for us.
Sure.
When we contest elections, we got 23% in the ward in the by-election. That we're hoping to win council seats next year. So watch this space. We will make an impact, and we hopefully can put the fear of God into some of these developments.
That's the thing. It's not with map making. It's actually with real politics.
Yeah.
That's if people, having been a politician, an elected politician, I found people weren't interested in sustainability or environmental issues. People wouldn't vote for it. So I think they will for the Greens maybe, but if you want to have a mainstream party to make the difference and tackle it in a different way, trying to court the votes on that within the party and outside was like pulling hen's teeth. So I completely respect your position because I think it's really very straightforward. It has to be systematically changed. But all my colleagues in the Labour Party were saying, well, people won't vote for it, and we've got to be elected first and foremost in order to get anywhere. So I think it's what we call a circular issue, and I think that's why I can now go bottom up to try and get people to care about it in the first place, and then the politicians will follow suit, in the same way that you are putting that pressure on. Anyway, I have got to read a train, actually.
Okay, yes. We were actually still going to screen this film. But congratulations, you made it this far. There's some refreshments outside. Press play at 25 past. That's okay?
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, that's more of a colleague of mine who does that.
Robbie.
we share an office with Michael Fiddler, who's prison. So he's very in a fortnight, he's on the road. We do come in on various days.
So how does it
Otherwise, it's I mean, there's plenty of consideration.
some comparison who is professor
There's jurisprudence on this, not a lot. But I mean, I think there are the rights of certain kind of race things. Third-tier rights. So, yeah.
the 70s as well.
Right, there's third-tier crimes do things to anti-discrimination. That's what where we have to first-tier right. No, that's not isn't there? No one invited me.
I got your contact. Because this whole building.
So some of my law colleagues do stuff around the criminology and school law, and we're all on the faculty. That doesn't work. It would just be
I've started now. It's quite nice to do
right, okay.
But you know, the reason I have a huge issue with social housing and housing associations. I think, okay, yes, Margaret's right to solve the council houses. Great. Build more council houses. Have a restriction that cannot be solved because the yard has and that way, not only does the council create jobs and create housing,
Innovation, creativity.
You have to provide you are going to understand the limitations. I am not a social tenant. I'm buying a book for 250,000.
yeah.
You're not getting it right? So because you want to do
I've got the keys, you know, like Kingdom.
now, I borrow that money. Instead of spending 12 years to pay back, I'm not going to 20 years to pay back.
There was another there was a different social housing where it was 1/3 owned by the developers, 1/3 owned by the housing association, and 1/3 was
But for these guys in Boston,
no, it's bad. Goodness, good idea. We want equity on a third of these.
I want them to go. I know they're all together. Bring out your money.
It's the absence of common sense. Because sense is taking over common sense, which is devoid of business sense, which is devoid of common sense. You know, it's... But the other thing is, everything's just followed delivered to person. Because you never know what kind of person you're going to get. And what type of person you have, what happens after. So that's why things become protectionist. They stop doing their job well in order to protect their job.
Well, I'm very happy to see the conversation on any of mine.
So, it's the British mindset. It's not actually, it's the European mindset. It's
I'm trying to get my head around.
yeah. But they are some of the hardest working people in the world.
That involves the environment. If something doesn't scan well, there was
I like to know how to kill it.
you know, transparency. The Prime Minister said, she was like, globalised media age. I think it's
through Facebook.
things often start unless it's occupied.
Politics and media and commercial interests.
Yeah, but she's always been saying,
in the desert.
say what you might buy fast and rent it out. That's revolutionary. The economics is very
and I know there's other interests now, but they'll bring it to America. Anyway, that was always in the
The gap was the Arab service. They were kicked out of London and then they were hosted.
That's why it's really refreshing when you get Gucci, you know, like Command and
So it goes the way of locals, the provincial accents.
But even by our own admission, we don't vote for there's more important stuff to them.
But when it goes to state private family,
Absolutely. If you see the coverage that
I've gone back to study, I'm studying purchasing.
that's the way to get to
No, it's buying things for someone else. So it's also, there's a sustainability model in there, modules in there as well. Well, it's sort of business. I might have to go, no one will employ me yet, so and what I'll do is I'll just live with my friend who got married on there, come back there and I'll say, okay, I'll pay you rent.
and it's something
that's fallen off the radar as well.
Yeah. actually the last day I was there, and then that's where they said, then you were because of the
So as soon as that ended, media disappeared.
You're welcome.
They're very difficult, but once you push the vote out, it makes it liquid.
Yeah.
It's just not
I'll grab some samples. Join.
Oh wow, we've got so many people left over.
Not good.